Our guest speaker tonight is Vic Fleischer. And Vic Fleischer is a native of Warren, Ohio, but he got his degree. He went to Kent State University. He earned a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in history, and then also a master's degree in library and information science. Now, he's worked as an archivist for 2 decades, 20 years. So he's an expert at researching, writing, and preserving local history. And you're going to see the results of his work in tonight's program. Let me start over. Let me take a breath. He is a university archivist at the University of Akron, and actually he is the head of archival services at the university. He's also an associate professor of bibliography at the university. Now, prior to coming to the University of Akron, he also was on the faculty at Youngstown State University and at Stan Hewitt Hall and Gardens. In addition to publishing articles in journals, archival journals, and journals for research libraries, he also researched, co-wrote, and co-produced the Emmy-nominated documentary called Lost Voices of the Great War. So we have an expert to share with us the results of his research of the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. Tonight, Vic is going to talk to us about that. So Vic, it is your program. And Vic, you'll probably have to unmute yourself as well. Oh, you did already.
Just did. Thank you, Cheryl, for that great introduction. Wow, I did all that.
You did.
Okay, great. Well, obviously, I enjoy what I do. My father instilled in me at a young age a love and appreciation for history, and it's something I've been able to make a career out of. So, you know, I love what I do. I love researching, writing about history, visiting historic sites, traveling, you know, and then running the archives. You know, I have to say, you know, several times a day, I'm like, wow, you know, I love my job and I can't believe I get paid to do what I do. Most of the time. And then some days I think they don't pay me enough, right? So, but it's an amazing job, an amazing resource we have at the University of Akron. And it's always my pleasure to share it with others. So as Cheryl said, I'm the university archivist and head of archives at the University of Akron, also an associate professor of bibliography. Archival Services, the official name of the department. So that includes our university archives, our archives that document the history of the university going back to our founding in 1870 through to today. So we're actually celebrating our sesquicentennial at the university, actually kicked off last year and will be going through May of this year. So we've had a number of projects going on with actually another book project and some digitization projects. So we stay very busy. And then of course, in my department, we have our special collections or regional history collections. I'm going to advance to the next slide here and give you a little bit of background about my department. So our special collections or regional history collections obviously document the history of which the university is a part. So our collections, our collecting areas mainly focus on the 4 or 5 areas you see here. I mentioned the history of the University of Akron, Akron and Summit County, Ohio canals, as most of you may know. The Ohio and Erie Canal ran through Akron. It's what really put Akron on the map. So we have a strong collection of the history of the Ohio canals, particularly the Ohio and Erie Canal. Obviously the rubber and polymer industry being the former rubber capital of the world, and then the related industry of lighter than air flight. You're going to see a lot of images in tonight's presentation that touch on various aspects of that history. The University of Akron Archives is one of the largest archives in the state of Ohio. As Cheryl had mentioned, I had worked at Youngstown State University. Prior to here, I helped put together the first archives there. I also worked at Stan Hewitt Hall and Gardens in the small archival collection there, and that was a great job. Loved working at Stan Hewitt. What a lovely place. I always figured with a history degree and my small salary, I'd never be able to live in a place like that. So I might as well work in a place like that. And it was an amazing job. Unfortunately, it didn't quite pay the bills. So moved on to academic positions and it's all worked out. Like I said, I've really enjoyed my career and really enjoy what I do. So we have some amazing resources at the University of Akron Archives, including those records that document the history of the rubber industry in Akron and in the region, particularly our Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company collection. It's one of our flagship collections. The majority of I wouldn't say the majority, but probably about half of the research requests we get focus around some aspect of Goodyear's history or the history of the local rubber industry. And let's see. So one of the most significant and interesting portions of that Goodyear corporate archives is the photograph series, or the photograph collection. And that was acquired in 2008. I had started at the University of Akron in 2007. So I was somewhat instrumental in bringing this collection in to the archives. As I mentioned here, it's part of the larger Goodyear corporate archives collection. And it's considered one of the oldest and largest corporate photograph archives in the nation. If anybody's been to Stan Hewitt, I'm sure many of you have. One of the sons of the Cyberlings, F.A. Cyberling, the co-founder of Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, one of his sons was an avid photographer, and F.A. and his wife were obviously interested in art and photography. So there's some very early images in this collection dating back to the founding of the company in 1898. It was appraised at 1.2 million, and it consists of 93,000 folders. We have not counted every individual negative and photographic print in the collection, but we estimate there's somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million images. So I used to love when Aaron Vander Summers was the former photographer at Goodyear, was there 30 some years before he retired. But every time he'd introduce me to somebody, he'd say, "This is Vic, and he's going to have all of our photographs digitized soon." And I just kind of laugh or cringe or whatever. All in soon. I don't know. We'll see about that. So we did get a grant. I think that's in the next slide, to digitize a lot of these images, which is what eventually led to the book. But let's see, the images visually document the history of Goodyear, the largest and most influential tire and rubber company in the world, from its founding in 1898 through 1984. Unfortunately, they did not donate any of the images after 1984. It documents many subjects important in American and world history. And let's see, this little box here with I gotta move this because it's covering my notes, unfortunately. See if I can move this out of the way. There we go. So some of those subjects include labor relations, factory conditions, women in the workforce, light and air flight, professional and amateur sports, advertising, transportation, aeronautics, wartime production. Aaron Vander Summers, the gentleman I mentioned, kind of summed up the significance of this collection when he noted once that the country's history is in those files. If you know anything about Goodyear, and I'm sure some of you do, because I've heard some of you are current or former employees. Goodyear's a global brand with plantations and plants throughout the globe. So it's just an amazing company with amazing history. This image just gives you an idea. I'm assuming you're seeing what I'm seeing now, of the filing cabinets that kind of go off into the distance. So when the images arrived to us, they were stored for, I don't know, 50, 60 years in the corporate headquarters over on West Market Street, in these old Army surplus cabinets. Now, the portion that we got the grant to digitize those images, everything from 1898 to 1951, have all been rehoused in acid-free boxes and folders and digitized and properly preserved in cold storage. But still a lot of work to do. So this just gives you an idea of the mass, the size of this corporate photograph collection. As I'd mentioned, we got a grant in 2010, $303,000 National Endowment for the Humanities grant. It was a 2-year project. The inventory, preserve, and scan and catalog 23,400 images from 1898 to 1951, and then make those images available online. So there is the website. We hope you purchase the book and enjoy reading the stories and looking at the images. But you can see 23,000 more images on our website and our digital archives. So as I'd mentioned, that only digitized a small portion of the collection. Again, there's somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million photographs. So we went back to the National Endowment for the Humanities twice to try to fund the second and third phase of this project. And unfortunately, we're turned down. The reviewers all said it was a great project, but unfortunately, we didn't get the funding. We're not sure why. We assume funding is scarce for a lot of these arts and humanities programs, so they wanted to spread it around. So my idea was to write a book, which is what we have here, and I'll tell you a little bit later how to purchase the book, and we'll get you a nice discount on that book as well if you're interested in purchasing one. So the purpose of the book was to promote the photographs and the use of the collection, promote it to a broader audience. I also wanted to take the photos and put them in a broader historical context, and tell some of the stories behind the photos, which I think the book does. And I'll go into some of those in detail a little bit tonight. To tell the rich and fascinating history of Goodyear, which is, I was pouring through these photos, working with student assistants and my staff, digitizing them and cataloging all of them. I just became fascinated and amazed by the company's rich history, just particularly the vast amount of products that the company produced. I mean, if they could make it out of rubber, they made it out of rubber. We just got a call yesterday, a research request, somebody in California that has a home with a Goodyear rubber roof. Didn't even know they made rubber roofs. So there you go. There's another product that just amazing, the types of materials that they made and the reach of the company. So we'll get into that here a little bit. I just want to give you some background. And then another purpose of writing the book was to kind of try to entice the NEH to fund additional phases of the preservation and digitization project for the remainder of the collection. So we'll probably, now that the book is out, reapply this summer. I think July is the deadline, and we'll see what happens there. So a little bit about the book, how it came together. I basically started looking at all of the photographs online. That I looked at all 23,500. I think that's how many we have digitized, and some certain themes seem to emerge, and those seem to focus around people, places, and products. And the volume I wrote is, well, I'll get into that in a minute, but in order to write the volume, I really wanted to write, it would have been something like 600 pages. And the University of Akron Press that published the book said, we wouldn't be able to afford to publish and print that. So why don't you scale it back a bit? So I cut it in half, and I think I cut it in half again. So the photos you'll see in the book that we'll talk about tonight are mostly focused around Goodyear's products that they produced during that time period, although you will see some of the people that produce those products and some of the places, the manufacturing scenes, the factories, the plantations. So let's see. The reason the book and the project ended in 1951, not that that was a significant date in the company's history or anything, was because we picked that date for the grant because 1951 was the cutoff date for nitrate film. And if you know anything about nitrate film can spontaneously combust, and it can't be extinguished even under water or sand. So it's a health and safety hazard. And that's particularly more with nitrate motion picture film more than with the still images. But we wanted to make sure we identified those images. They're on nitrate film base, digitized those, and got those into the proper cold storage, which we did. So a lot of the images you'll see in the book, and I'll be showing you tonight, have not been published before and have rarely been seen by the general public. And I tried to select the ones that were most historically significant and aesthetically pleasing. So I organized the book into 6 chapters. There's 2 chapters on tires, a chapter on airships, one on the various balloons manufactured by Goodyear, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then mechanical goods or industrial products was a whole nother line that they launched around 1915. And then, of course, war products. Goodyear, as many of you probably know, not only manufactured a plethora of war products during World War II, but really going back to the First World War. So we have some of those images as well. So the resulting book totals 268 pages. I would have written a lot more. I have more written, so there might be a volume 2 down the road. But based on the publisher and cost of publishing and printing, I had to scale that back. So it's 268 pages. There's roughly 200 photographs. Again, many that have not been seen before or published before. Some of them were top secret. They were still in the folders that were labeled top secret from World War II, and I'll show you what some of those are in a minute. So what I did again was take those photos, select the most historically significant, the most aesthetically appealing, and try to put them in a broader historical context, tell the history behind the products and the company, and then provide photo captions for each of those photos. So we'll jump right into some of the photos. Again, Goodyear was founded by F.A. and C.W. Seiberling, 1898. I always say the Seiberlings gave me two jobs. One was at Stan Hewitt, and one is here, being that this collection is our flagship collection, what has really helped put our archives on the map. Some of the earliest products that Goodyear manufactured, the first products rolled off the production line November 21st, 1898, and those were carriage tires and bicycle tires. So these were the days before, the automobile was in its infancy, obviously, and carriages and buckboards and things like that were still running the streets and running the countryside, right? So those were the first products they decided to manufacture. Of course, the bicycling craze of the late 19th century was still in bloom. So those are what they decided to manufacture right off the bat. So this image shows a tire builder putting a carriage tire on the rim, 1914. So Goodyear not only manufactured and was a trailblazer in creating new rubber products, improving on rubber products, but also manufactured a lot of the machinery or equipment to build these products, and they even improve things like mounting them to the rim, like this Style D machine that helped break the Kelly Springfield monopoly. When Goodyear got in the business, kind of late, B.F. Goodrich founded in 1870. So, this is almost 30 years later. They were the upstarts, the upcomers, the new kid on the block, so to speak. And, all the bigger companies, U.S. Rubber, B.F. Goodrich were vowing to put them, Kelly Springfield, to put Goodyear out of business before they could even get started shortly after they hung up their shingles. So Goodyear did a number of things to try to break the monopolies and get around some of the patents that run a lot of these rubber products, so including this machine here. A lot of the images also show not only finished products, but the products being manufactured. This is a scene in the carriage room in the Akron plant around 1914. From the research that I did, spent a lot of time in the company newsletter called the Wingfoot Clan. I think the first one was published in 1912. And sometimes it gives you some descriptions of how they manufactured these products. So I think I found an article that mentioned, development of carriage tires, for instance, that they would take the original raw material and put it through these machines, and it would squeeze it out like a sausage grinder, and these rolls of a carriage tire stock would come out the other end. So they were made in different lengths, different widths, but also were sold on reels that could be taken off and cut the length in the field. So again, a lot of innovations by the company. I mentioned bicycle tires. As the automobile was becoming more popular in the early 20th century, the 1910s and teens, the bicycling craze was kind of waning. So Goodyear was trying to find a way to push the sale of bicycles, and particularly bicycle tires. So 1916, they were one of the sponsors of the national bicycle races. These are races that were held throughout the country. This one's in Oakland, California, and they vowed to help sell 1 million bicycles. And of course, they could outfit those with 2 million bicycle tires, right? So I just love some of the images here. I'm not even sure what this large contraption is with the gentleman sitting up high, some early bicycle contraption he made. There's just some interesting things going on in this photograph that I thought I'd include in the book. Let's see. When the company was founded, the Seiberlings also knew that they wanted to get into automobile tire manufacturing, but they didn't have any experience in that, so they hired Paul Litchfield out of New England. He was an engineer, got his degree from MIT, and was working at a number of small rubber companies in New England and New York, and they stole him away. He came to the company in 1900, and shortly thereafter, they manufactured their first automobile tires and improved on a number of tires like clincher tires and no rim cut tires and some of these and cord tires and these types of things. But I include this image because I like showing some of the ones of not only some of the early automobiles, but also some of the strange contraptions that Goodyear tires outfitted, such as this armored car. So this was 1915. Obviously, by this time, World War I was going on. We weren't involved until 1917, but it was the first motorized war, and the country and the company knew that. They knew eventually we were going to be in the war, and Goodyear wanted to kind of take advantage of that and start manufacturing tires for a number of armored vehicles. So we have several of these types of images in the collection. This was an armored vehicle that was manufactured by, I got to check my notes here because I haven't committed all this to memory. This is a Davidson Cadillac armored car developed by Royal Page Davidson and his cadets at Northwestern Military Academy in Chicago, and it sported Goodyear's all-weather treads, which was a innovative design, diamond tread design that it was really the one of the best in the industry, an industry standard for I think 30 or 40 years. One of my favorites, the Moxie Horsemobile. Just love this image. This was a modified Rolls Royce that Goodyear outfitted with its tires. It appeared in parades. I think this one's in Akron. And it was used by the Moxie Beverage Corporation to promote their soda pop. Goodyear was involved in racing from practically the start. I think Goodyear entered their first race in 1901, and obviously they use races to test their tires, the durability and stamina of their tires. So they entered in 1901. By 1909, every major race in the country was won on Goodyear tires. This image shows the 1922 Indianapolis 500 winner crossing the finish line on Goodyear tires, obviously. Unfortunately, after this race in 1922, Goodyear withdrew from professional automotive racing and took a 37-year hiatus from the sport, mostly to cut costs. So it's like, why would they do that? They were, kind of at the top of the field and winning all these races. Well, from the research I uncovered, that it was just too costly for the company, and they were trying to cut costs. Again, there was a depression in the early 1920s where FA and CW unfortunately lost control of the company and then went off to found their own tire and rubber company, their second tire and rubber company, Cyberling Tire and Rubber in Barberton. And then, of course, we had the Great Depression, several years later. So Goodyear also manufactured war tires out of their own brand of synthetic rubber called Chemigum, and also tires with reclaimed rubber that were sold here on the home front. Motorcycle tires. Goodyear got involved in motorcycle tires at an early date. 1901, the Hendy Manufacturing Company introduced the Indian motorcycle. Harley Davidson a couple years later with their motorcycle. So Goodyear really wanted to get in on the ground floor and start manufacturing tires for these new contraptions. The first motorcycle tires rolled off the line in 1909, and by 1910, Goodyear had sold their first motorcycle tires. They produced what they called the perfect tire. Unlike their competitors that built theirs by hand, Goodyear manufactured this machine, simply called the tire building machine, that helped eliminate all the imperfections in the tire, and claimed that it was the best tire on the market. And let's see, by the time of this photograph, 1914, the company was producing 1,000 motorcycle tires per day. Like automobile racing, Goodyear tested their motorcycle tires in motorcycle races of the day. If anybody saw the little docu-series, Harley and the Hendersons, it was a great documentary series that chronicles early motorcycle development and motorcycle racing. They were raced on these old motor dromes and bicycle velodromes that were later dubbed murder drones because they were so hazardous, and many of the racers were getting killed. So this is one from a series of photographs that we have of some of these early motorcycle races on what were later called murder dromes. Goodyear eventually got out of motorcycle racing because it was just too hazardous, too dangerous. There were too many injuries. Ethically, they just didn't think that was the right thing to do. And then we start having gentlemen like these two guys that started testing Goodyear tires, racing from cross country, going to San Francisco. So guys like Cannonball Baker, the Cannonball Run was named after. I don't think he ran on Goodyear tires, but these guys are kind of in that spirit of Edwin Cannonball Baker, trying to race across the country, trying to break the land, not the land speed records, but the cross country records. Could you imagine 1915, the roads, pretty rudimentary for the day. So I couldn't imagine. Much braver than me. Goodyear also manufactured tires for not only World War One, the war on the border with Mexican revolutionary Francisco Pancho Villa, which is a dress rehearsal for World War One, but also World War Two. As we see here, these are Harley Davidson motorcycles outfitted with Goodyear all-weather balloon tires. Obviously, Goodyear manufactured a whole line of tubes as well, including bullet sealing fuel, bullet sealing tubes, tire tubes during World War II, and a whole line of rims. Let's see, the Goodyear rim plant was built in Akron in 1926. By the 1930s, they were manufacturing a complete line of rims for cars, trucks, buses, and all kinds of construction vehicles. And later that became, the rim plant in Akron became one of the largest in the nation. Chapter 2 talks about other types of tires, tires meant for off the beaten path, like truck tires, tractor tires, train and plane tires. So this image shows right around the 19 teens, going into World War One, Goodyear started manufacturing truck tires, and we're really pushing for pneumatic tires, particularly during World War One when all trucks were on solid tires. But moving to pneumatic tires were causing a number of problems in the industry. So Goodyear had to contend with that, and it wasn't until after the war that they really proved the durability and the superiority of pneumatic truck tires over solid. One way they did that was with the Transcontinental Motor Express. They first had the Akron to Boston Express, and then this Transcontinental Motor Express that traveled from Akron to San Francisco along the Lincoln Highway, again to show the durability and superiority of those products. And eventually they won the day. By the mid 1920s, most trucks in the country were on pneumatic tires. Just a fun image I threw in here. This is of a Goodyear advertising truck. They first use it for mail delivery service, and then for advertising, it just kind of shows off and promotes their Goodyear all-weather diamond tread. Busing as well, relating to the trucking industry. Goodyear got involved with the busing industry at a very early date and tested their bus tires on their own buses. This is the Goodyear Heights bus that transported people from the Goodyear Heights housing to the factory. And, obviously if you've driven in Akron in winter, anytime that you're really, there's a lot of steep grades and hills. In fact, our building is on a hill, Polsky building, and it's always a fun time trying to get trucks backed into our loading dock on the hill. So because of the steep grades in Akron, Goodyear used it on its own buses to test their bus tires. Eventually, Goodyear bus tires were used by a lot of the major busing companies, including Greyhound, and were supposedly, from what I read, some of the first tires across the deserts of North Africa and the Middle East. They also made tires for trains and rail cars, like this contraption, the Fairbanks Morse rail car. I like this image because it shows that these tires could run either on the rail or on the road. And if you wanted to switch directions, you just simply got out, jacked the car up, two guys can turn it around, you could be heading in the opposite direction. So unfortunately, a lot of these tires and other products they manufactured for locomotives in the railroad industry didn't really take off. They weren't that popular. They just were too pricey to manufacture. Goodyear's work at airplane tires began in 1909, only 6 years after the Wright brothers made their historic flight at Kitty Hawk. Paul Litchfield, who I'd mentioned, later became CEO. He was factory manager early on, developed one of the first pneumatic tires for airplanes that replaced the skid or sled runner type of airplane landing gear. So before then, like you see that the Wright Flyers, if you've been down to Dayton and seen some of the reproductions of the Wright Flyers, they landed on a skid. So Goodyear was one of the first tire manufacturers to put airplanes on rubber wheels. They worked with the Wright brothers, Glenn Martin, Glenn Curtis, really going back before World War One. Manufactured a number of tires for Allied planes during World War One. This one's from the interwar period, obviously. And of course, Goodyear manufactured a number of tires for various bombers, fighters, transport planes during World War II. This one shows the famous Memphis Belle when it visited Akron. And that's one of the Goodyear aircraft employees sitting in the wheel there, just to demonstrate the sheer size of that tire they manufactured. Excuse me. Of course, Goodyear got involved in manufacturing tractor tires. One of the first that they manufactured was called the air wheel, which you see here, or the donut wheel. The good thing about these was that they didn't damage soil and tree roots, and so they could be used on places like golf courses. And like you see here at the Akron airport, they were used to take planes from the hangar out to the tarmac without damaging the lawn or the where they take off. Forgetting that word. Anyway, just another Goodyear innovation. Goodyear tires also outfitted. They started manufacturing huge, colossal tires for earth moving equipment. This is their 300 millionth tire in 1939, made of in a 20-ton mold. Tires like that fitted things like this strange contraption, the Marsh Buggy, which was developed by an amphibian car used by the Gulf Oil Company to explore marshlands in Louisiana and Florida, looking for possible places to drill for oil. And Goodyear manufactured the tires for this contraption. Supposedly one of the first vehicles that could travel on both land and water. And of course, for the snow cruiser that was used in Admiral Richard Byrd's third expedition to Antarctica, these tires were 10 foot high and 750 pounds each. So 4 tires and one spare in the trunk, believe it or not. So these traversed, huge outcroppings of ice and in Antarctica, it was the snow cruiser was used a mobile scientific station. So it climbed the polar mountains and the ice fields in Antarctica. Chapter 3 talks about airships, various types of airships, from blimps or non-rigid airships to zeppelins or rigid airships. Goodyear developed its first airship in the early 1910s. F.A. Seiberling, the company founder, was very interested in air travel, particularly lighter than air flight. And they manufactured the gas bag for explorer Melvin Vanneman's airship known as the Akron. I believe Seiberling named it the Akron because he wanted to see the name Akron carried across the Atlantic. So this airship, 1912, was supposed to travel from New Jersey to Europe, and unfortunately exploded shortly after takeoff, killing Vanneman and the rest of the crew. So that was Goodyear's first experimentation into developing envelopes and for airships and airship components. After that, F.A. Seiberling said he didn't have the heart to continue with building lighter than aircraft after the death of the crew. But during World War I, the country called upon Goodyear to manufacture B-class and C-class airships for the war, and Goodyear got back into manufacturing airships at that point in time. This is a B-class airship, I believe, out at Wingfoot Lake. So Wingfoot Lake, which is there now, which is still used as the base in Akron to operate the Goodyear airships, was built in, I believe, 1916 to 1917 during World War I, and became known as the Kitty Hawk of lighter than air flight, because it's where a lot of these early airships in this country were built and developed, and where a lot of the blimp pilots were trained. This shows the Pony Blimp in Los Angeles. Goodyear built its Los Angeles plant, I think, in the 19-teens, and then had a small blimp operation service out in LA from that time through, well, that time onward. Basically, they've had a airship presence on the West Coast. So the Pony Blimp was kind of sold as the everyman's airship for commercial and sporting and military purposes. The idea never really caught on. Again, too pricey. Many of the images in the collection, there's thousands that show the various Goodyear airships flying over things from the Cleveland Lake shore to, this one shows the Mayflower blimp over Boston Harbor. The image on the cover of the book, if you've seen that or can see that, I picked this one because it shows the blimps over Cleveland, the exposition that was up there in 1937, I believe. So that's the Puritan, the Reliance, and the Enterprise flying over Terminal Tower in downtown Cleveland. Unfortunately, Terminal Tower got a little cut off there, but I wasn't involved with the cover design, but they did a heck of a job. So it was a horizontal image that had to be converted to a vertical image, but I think you get the idea. A lot of the images in the collection show the blimp signs, such as one of the first night signs you see here called the Neonogram. They were 4-foot by 6-foot panels. The first successful blimp sign appeared over the Century of Progress exposition in Chicago in 1933. This is the Ranger Blimp, kind of historic blimp. There were numerous blimps known as the Ranger. They would recycle a lot of these names. Like there was the Mayflower 1, 2, and 3. The Ranger 2 attracted attention as the Ghost Blimp. If anybody ever heard this story, during World War II, it was patrolling off the Pacific coast and ended up crashing in Daly City, California, without its crew, who mysteriously vanished. To this day, they still don't know what happened to the crew members. They think they might have fallen overboard, or that they got in a fight and fell out, or all kinds of conspiracy theories. So that's one interesting story behind the Ranger Blimp. In addition to non-rigid airships, the company obviously also got involved in rigid airships, also known as Zeppelins, and were involved in one way or another with really every rigid airship produced in this country. This is the USS Shenandoah. Goodyear manufactured the 20 gas cells for the Shenandoah at its Akron plant. Unfortunately, the Shenandoah, as many of you know, crashed in Noble County, Ohio in 1925 after encountering a thunderstorm, killing 14 of its 43 crew members. So that kind of put a damper on the program, although the U.S. Navy had entered into a contract with Goodyear to manufacture 2 colossal rigid airships, the USS Akron and the USS Macon. So the collection includes a series of images showing the various stages of construction of these 2 colossal airships. So they were designed, and the manufacturing was overseen by Dr. Karl Arnstein, the famous German airship designer, and his crew. So this is 1931, this image. That's the time period it was manufactured, and it operated all the way until 1933. Excuse me, when it crashed off the Atlantic coast, killing 73 of its 76 crew members. The USS Macon, unfortunately, had a similar fate. Let's see, I believe this operated from 1933 to 1935 and crashed in Monterey Bay, California. Fortunately, because or unfortunately, because the crash of the Akron, they learned a few things, and then they put I believe they put life preservers and lifeboats on the Macon. So only 2 of the 76 crew members were killed during that crash, and there just happened to be a boat traveling in that area that rescued them. They didn't crash too far off the Monterey Peninsula there. So that's the end. I have a few other slides in another presentation here. I got to switch presentations because these images make the file so large. So let me see if I can switch over here real quick. We got a few more images to show, and then we'll take questions. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Can everybody see that image okay?
Not yet. We can't see it.
Oh, okay. I got to share screen again. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, let me go back here.
Now we see it.
Okay.
And then you just have, there you go. Mm-hmm.
There we go. All right, now I just need my notes. There we go. All right, so I know we're going to be running out of time shortly, so I'll just kind of zoom through. I could talk about these forever. I've spent 6 years of my life putting this book together. My daughter was 6 years old when I started, and she's now 12. And one of the funniest things I think she said to me was, "Daddy, what's taking you so long to write this book? Does it go back to the time of the dinosaurs?" So not quite. I told her, it only covers about 50 years. So, anyway, amazing company history. A lot of stories behind these images that are just fascinating to share. So, in addition to airships, Goodyear was also involved in the manufacture of a number of types of balloons, including free balloons. As you see here, some of these are being tested out at Wingfoot hangar in 1917. So they manufactured these for World War I for observation to direct artillery fire and observe troop movement. And they also entered them in the national and international balloon races, and Goodyear became one of the winningest teams in national and international balloon racing history. I like this image in particular because well, it's somewhat local, Pittsburgh, PA, 1928. This was called the most disastrous day in ballooning history. Shortly after the balloons took off, a thunderstorm broke out and lightning struck several balloons, including 2 Goodyear balloons that were in the race, and killed one of the Goodyear balloon pilots, Maurice Morton, on contact. The other gentleman, Ward T. Van Orman, one of the winningest balloon racers in history, rode the balloon to the ground and survived with only a broken leg. So very dangerous sport. You wouldn't catch me up there. They also manufactured kite balloons for the World Wars, barrage balloons that were hung around bases, strategic locations. They had a grid of steel wires in between them, and they made the enemy bombers fly higher and made their bombing less accurate. Goodyear was also involved with manufacturing 3 Stratosphere balloons in the 1930s. The Century of Progress that you see here outside the Goodyear Air Dock in Akron, and then the Explorer 1 and 2. These balloons were really manufactured to explore the stratosphere, and really was started one of the early space races between America and Russia. They were constantly trying to make larger balloons that could fly higher into the stratosphere, and really the idea was to for scientific testing, to run scientific experiments and things, but it really kind of became an early space race, and that they were always trying to go higher and higher, and a number of Goodyear's balloons broke the height record there in the stratosphere. Some of you may know that Goodyear produced what are called figure balloons or comic balloons. So they produced all of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day balloons from um, the first year in 1927. I think the first Macy's parade was 1924. The first balloons appeared in 1927, all the way up through the early 1980s. So we have some images that show not only the finished balloons, but also how they used to manufacture these in pieces and piece them together in parts and then would paint them. There's a number of images that show the various balloons going through the parade route through Columbus Circle and Times Square. This is from the 1936 Thanksgiving Day Parade. You see Gulliver from Gulliver's Travels, the two-headed giant, the Native American there in the background. The balloons, a lot of people don't know, also appeared in a number of other parades throughout the country. The Bamberger's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New Jersey. Felix the Cat was one of the first balloons manufactured by Goodyear. Some claim it was the first balloon to appear in the Macy's parade, but the debate's still out on that one. They manufactured a number of balloons that appeared in the Gilmore, if anybody remembers Gilmore Oil, the Gilmore Circus parades that traveled the West Coast in the 1930s. They also appeared in a production called Broadway Balloons that supposedly took them as far away as Canada, South America, and Europe, as I found out in my research. So Goodyear balloons really traveled the globe. I mentioned Goodyear. There's a whole chapter about mechanical goods from large conveyor belts. This is the largest conveyor belt ever made. The conveyor belts, they might not sound significant, but things like these conveyor belts help build things like the Shasta and Grand Coulee dams, helped bring coal and iron ore out of the earth, things like the Mesabi Range in Minnesota. Goodyear hoses, again, might not sound very significant, but Goodyear hoses were used on huge construction projects like the Panama Canal, or as you see here, Goodyear pneumatic air hoses being used for the construction of Mount Rushmore. Goodyear produced homes. We're running a little bit out of time, so I'll skip that one. So they did get somewhat out of their comfort zone and manufactured things for war workers during the war and for the post-war baby boom.
Vic, it doesn't matter if you go a little bit over because these are very interesting and we won't have an opportunity to see them again. So you take your time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, the last chapter here, war products. As I'd mentioned, Goodyear manufactured a number of products for the war, going back really to the war on the border with Mexican revolutionary Francisco Pancho Villa. The dress rehearsal for World War One, and then of course World War Two. The arsenal of democracy here in the United States. Goodyear was involved in manufacturing numerous war products, from gas masks. You see the ladies on the production line sewing gas masks components together, and that really goes back to the First World War as well. Half tracks, tank tracks, bogey wheels. Goodyear produced nearly 30,000 of these products during the war for the Army. Life rafts, pontoons, assault boats. We have hundreds of images that show these types of products being manufactured, mostly by the Rosies, Rosie the rubber worker, as they've been called, in Akron and their other plants throughout the country. One of my favorite stories in the book, one of the most interesting things I found, was Goodyear's manufacturing what was called pneumatic dummy equipment, such as planes, transport trucks, tanks, and planes. These were manufactured to deceive the Nazis, particularly in the days leading up to the D-Day invasion. They wanted the Nazis to think that the invasion was going to be in July at the Pas de Calais in France, not in June in Normandy. So they would place these dummy tanks. They were pneumatic. They'd blow them up with air, and they could deflate them, move them around, or leave them inflated, move them around, and put them in different strategic places on the southern coast of England to, again, direct, Nazi reconnaissance planes to think that the invasion was coming at a later date and in a different location. So that was part of what was called Operation Fortitude, Patton's Ghost Army. It was a fake army that was supposedly going to be invading Nazi Europe at a different place and time. So a very successful campaign that, as I argue in the book, really helped help the success of the Normandy invasion. Of course, what E.J. Thomas, one of the Goodyear CEOs, called a Herculean program, was a development of synthetic rubber during World War II. And Goodyear really got involved with developing synthetic rubber during the late 20s, early to mid 30s. Dr. Ray P. Dinsmore and the rubber chemist there, but they couldn't produce one that was cheap enough to get to the market until World War II, when the Japanese cut off the natural rubber supply in the Far East, and 90% of our natural rubber was taken away. Then there was a big push to find a way to manufacture a more economical type of synthetic rubber. So by 1937, Goodyear developed chemigum or chemigum rubber, and by the middle of the war, they're operating synthetic rubber plants in Akron and Houston. And a lot of the synthetic rubber was used for bullet sealing fuel cells that helped save a lot of airmen that if the fuel cell was punctured or shot by the Nazis or the Japanese, the escape of the fuel wouldn't cause the plane to blow up. The synthetic rubber would kind of swell when it came into contact, I think, with the fuel, and would help seal that hole and would prevent it from exploding. So a major innovation there during the company developed during World War II. Getting outside of its normal wheelhouse, it also manufactured airplane parts, taking its experience with light metal alloys, with the work they did with designing and building airships. They started manufacturing various components for bombers, including the B-26 Marauder that you see here in the air dock. Before they built the Goodyear aircraft plant, they were using the floor of the air dock to manufacture a lot of these airplane parts. And of course, many of you know the Corsair was the only plane that Goodyear produced in its entirety. Just over 4,000 Corsair FG-1 Corsairs manufactured, mostly in Akron's Plant D during the war. If you don't know much about these planes, they were known for their gull wing design that folded up and allowed them the Navy to carry more of these planes on aircraft carriers. Gun production as well. Goodyear manufactured anti-aircraft guns in its Jackson, Michigan plant, Bren clips in its plant in Canada, and operated a bagging powder plant in Charleston, Indiana. So any way that the company could help support the war effort, Paul Litchfield, who was CEO at the time, said that the company and its employees were at the country's disposal. So an amazing history, lots of photographs, just an amazing resource with an amazing history. So with that, I'll a couple things here, and then I'll entertain questions. So the book is $49.95 on Amazon, but you can buy it through the University of Akron Press website at uakron.edu/UA Press, and they're offering a 30% discount to attendees, and I think that'll be going on for a while now. Just use the discount UAP30, and that'll get you a 30% discount, so about $35, I believe. Like I said, chock full of photographs, almost 200 photographs, just some amazing stories about Akron and Northeast Ohio history. So let's see, that's how you find us. If you ever want to come down to the archives and do research, we are open to the general public, usually 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, but we have restricted hours because of COVID, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday by appointment only. There's our email address, archives@uakron.edu. If you want to learn more about the archives, or if you're doing some research or want to find out some more information about the company's history, you can also go there to our website or check out the digital archives here, where we have a lot of more images that you can browse and explore at your leisure. So And sorry, I went a little over. I'll entertain questions.
That's all right. So if you have a question, now would be the time for you to unmute yourself and ask the question, or if you're a little shy, you can put it in the chat and we will see it and answer your questions. You know, I read the book prior to the, to this presentation, and I truly was amazed at all the different ways that the Goodyear, I was amazed at the ability of the owners and the managers of the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. When they saw something that was needed in the future, they just started making it. They just turned their production over to that. So it to me, that no wonder their company lasted so long, because they were constantly updating and making things that I had no idea they made. So it was very interesting read. Vic, you did a great job on researching it and putting it all together with the captions under the pictures and, explanations of the history. It was really good. So.
Thank you. That's what really amazed me about the company, just the breadth and depth of the products. When I came to Akron, I thought, well, they just made tires and blimps, right? No, like I said, if you can name it, if it can be made out of rubber, they made it out of rubber. We even have a painting of Charles Goodyear that is on rubber. Now that's, well, Goodyear didn't make that rubber, but it was in that time when everybody was trying to make everything out of rubber to try to sell rubber products. But and as I mentioned, the Seiberling brothers and Paul Litchfield were just really at the cutting edge. They would travel to Europe to see what some of the new technology was over there for tire manufacturing or machinery or equipment, or even with mechanical goods, or with the skin of airships or airplane fabric. And they not only kind of take those ideas back here, but they pay the gentlemen that were doing the manufacturing, and get them to come to Akron, like they did with Carl Arnstein and the airship designers. Just amazing what they're able to accomplish.
Questions, comments?
I have a question regarding funding for Volume 2. Have you approached LeBron James? Because Akron is his hometown, and then he's interested in educating. He has his own schools there, so perhaps he might be a resource for you.
Good idea. There's a lot of things I'd like to approach him for funding for. Yeah, this book I pretty much funded out of my own pocket. It was a labor of love. Again, the idea was to promote the collection and to try to get the NEH to fund the second phase of the project. But yeah, I funded most of this and did most of the research and writing on my own time. And then the University of Akron Press was kind enough to publish it, and they put a lot of time and effort into it. And all I keep telling them is I just want them to make their money back. So, I think I've given away more than I've sold. So
I thought it was interesting. I didn't notice in the book, maybe I didn't read well enough, but you said something about the bus that brought people from the company housing to the plant. I didn't realize that there was company housing.
Oh, yes. So Goodyear Heights was the company housing for the Goodyear employees that was started in, and there's plenty of images in the collection and information in the collection of history of the company housing and the houses being built. So that was 19 teens, maybe as early as 1912. They started breaking ground there. And, a lot of those homes are still there today as you drive through Goodyear Heights. And of course, Firestone had their own company housing, Firestone Park. Again, a lot of those homes are still there, so you can still drive through those and see some of the original houses. So yeah, those were started in the 19 teens.
Right.
Cheryl, I didn't have a question, but I'd certainly like to make a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I appreciate Dick's summary of Goodyear, which was quite extensive and very knowledgeable, obviously, as a result of a lot of your time and effort to cover so many different topics. So I compliment you on a broad spectrum of the company itself. And I suspect that picture of the conveyor belt may not be the largest one in the world anymore.
Yeah, probably
back in the 40s or so.
Right.
But, and there's a lot of other products in the engineer products division that are quite interesting that you didn't have time to mention. But overall, fantastic. I look forward to maybe looking at your book and probably ordering it.
Great.
And
Thank
I
you.
thank you very much. You did an excellent job on a very broad field. I mean, there's so many different things you could have said or didn't say. I'm sure you had to sift it through in order to confine yourself to the limited amount of time that you had. But I appreciate it personally, and I thank you for coming today.
Sure. Thank you for attending. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, it's a big topic, even though we're just dealing with, 53 years of the company's history. And like I said, the book I really wanted to write would have been 3 or 4 times the size. So they told me to cut it in half and cut it in half again. So even, this one really just focused on the products, and there were still products I had even written up and had great images selected that unfortunately had to be cut at the last minute. Goodyear was involved with rubber roads, putting rubber into roads, and they thought that would make it more durable. And one of the first rubber roads was in Akron. So we had pictures of that we were going to show, and they didn't think it was interesting enough, the editor. So it got, but yeah, there was so much more that could be said, that could have been done, but I'm still young, so volume 2 and 3 maybe, if my wife lets me. This took a lot of time away from the family.
I was also amazed that, in our modern day, I admire people who want to fly to Mars or, the astronauts, but just think of the bravery and the courage of those men who went up in those balloons, because those airships had a very bad record, really, and so that just amazed me to watch that and say, oh my gosh, they put their lives on the line for the company, because a lot of those pilots, really, well, they put their lives on the line. Absolutely. Because they loved it. So
absolutely, like I said, a lot braver people than me. So and we got to tip our hat too to the ladies, that the women that were involved in manufacturing. We think about World War II, the women joining the workforce, but really for Goodyear, at least, that goes back to World War I. When the men were fighting on the Western Front, Goodyear was a company that hired a lot of women at an early age to, besides doing secretarial work, office work, to do manufacturing, particularly of the blimps at that early date. And Goodyear was also one of the early companies to hire what used to be referred to as deaf mutes. We refer to as deaf or hearing impaired today. And Akron became at one point the crossroads of the deaf in the 1920s. So this was during World War I. They started. The state of Ohio came in and said, you try to hire some of these folks, they'll be great workers, and they proved to be some of the best workers at Goodyear.
Other comments, questions? All right, well, let me thank you all for coming tonight. I think we learned a lot, and we know that the book is out there with a lot more information than what we could cover in the time that we spent together. And of course, I want to thank our guest speaker, Vic Fleischer from the University of Akron, the archives up there. Great job putting the book together. Great job giving us a view of that, of the work that you did, and sharing that with us, because not all of us are going to sit down and put all that stuff together. So we appreciate your effort and your dedication to that. Yes, Sarah is clapping, because it's a great feat, because I'm not doing that, so it's wonderful. So thank goodness we have people like Vic.
6 years of my life, but I enjoyed it. So yeah. I went through a couple of rewrites, and so I know my family is glad that it is done and it is in print.
Yeah, right.
Thank you very much. I hope I didn't overwhelm with too much information. There's just so much to cover, and so thank you.
I would say you did not. You only whet our appetite for knowing more. The second half, volumes 2 and 3.
Absolutely. Like I said, you can purchase one for 30% off on the University of Akron Press website with the code UAP30.
There you go. And if you have, if you didn't have a chance to copy that down or whatever, I did, and I can get in touch with Vic and give you that information. So you can always contact me at the library if you need to. And I'll tell you, the book makes a great like a great coffee table book for people, whether or not they worked at Goodyear. It's got a lot of just interesting things about the Goodyear Company and about our country in general at that time in those years. So a lot of nice pictures and writing, because it was very informative.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Okay.
All right, well,
Have a good
everybody
evening.
enjoy the rest of their evening. Thank you so much.
Stay
All
safe.
right,
Thanks.
All right.
all right,
Appreciate
bye.
it. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.